This big machine is called a surface planer, or sometimes just referred to as a planer. Now, most wood shops, especially ones in high schools, with a large planer, they have a planer that'll take a board up to 24 inches wide. Anything bigger and it won't fit. So the planer bed, this is called the bed, is where you'll put it through and the machine will suck it through and shave off the top of the board, making it thinner. So the main purpose of a planer is to plane or to thin a board as you're putting it through. It smooths the top out. Therefore, all of the blades on this are above the board. So they're going to be right here on top instead of a lot of my other machines where they're found underneath, like a jointer. Some of the other parts, you have your standard on-off switch. On this old machine, it's run, it's not a digital model, and so we have a little tape measure here that you can figure out your thickness. To raise and lower the table to change that thickness, the crank is on this side here. To change it, you simply turn the crank, either making it thicker or thinner, and one turn is 1/16 of an inch. So half a turn would be a 32nd, and so forth. In this case, with the handle on top, that stops it exactly at a 1/16 of an inch. So whichever 1/16 you're on, if the handle's up, it's dead on a 1/16. Now, other models are digital. The newer ones are going to have a digital display here, somewhere on the front, usually on the left, and your individual teachers may have different settings for where you start at. Generally, the most difficult thing about using a planer is knowing where to set it up for your first pass. So I'm zooming in to show you this particular planer setup. So if you can read a tape measure, this is currently set at 1 1/16. So there's 1 inch and it's one turn beyond that. Normally for a single board, boards that you're going to pass through that aren't glued up and they're fairly flat, you're going to start at 7/8 of an inch or 14/16, depending on how you want to read the tape measure. Count every single line down to 14/16, and we just raise the table to right there at 14/16, handles on top. Again, if you have a digital model, this may be a setting, you press a button, hit start, and it'll move to that spot. But every time after that, this will plane the top face, and after that, we turn it once and we plane it again. That takes me down to 13/16. After that, we typically will go to the sander to take it all the way down to 3/4 of an inch. But this model has a little bit of red paint that you can see on here. So it's easy to tell your first pass is going to be one turn below. So if I get right up to the bottom of that red paint, go down one turn, a little gap in the paint appears, that is 7/8, that's your first pass. And then raise it back up. The red paint is saying you're there, this is your last pass, that's 13/16. Once we have it set, you're ready to plane. The minimum length of board that you can put through a planer is 12 inches long. Now, you do not want to run a planer without the dust collector running, so the dust collector is what you hear in the background. Otherwise, all the wood will fly out the front. So one other thing about the planer is you never want to stoop down to look inside about what's going on, because all the dust, their pieces are flying out the front, especially if you don't have the dust collector on. But even with it running, pieces still come out the front. So now that it's set, all you've got to do is turn it on and push it in. Now, the major accidents that we've had, our fingers are underneath the board when you push it in there. There's a roller in here that'll slam down on top of this board. So when I put it through, it'll want to lift it up. Push down, and in it goes. Then I can let go. I'll then raise the handle one turn with the handle on top, and then run it through on the other side. So I did this one first, now we do the other one. The board came out the other side and I turned everything off. And now I've got a board that is planed flat on both sides and it's 13/16 thick. Now we can go to the sander to sand it down. Now, why don't we just plane it down to 13/16? Well, this is the reason. If you look closely at the board, you can see ripples, okay, these little ripple marks on both sides. That is simply the blade cuts the wood shifts forward a little, another blade cuts the wood, it shifts forward again, and so forth, and that leaves a lot of uneven ripples. Now, they're small, and you could probably hand sand them out, but a wide belt sander, our next machine, will do a better job. One of the nicest features about a planer in general is that you can run multiple pieces through at the same time. Set it, turn on the machine, and you can just run 1, 2, 3, or all at once. It'll take up to 24 inches, as I said before, but even if it's in individual pieces, just run them through. It will shave them down all at the same time. Also, if you're doing a large panel, you need to make absolutely sure, and this goes for any piece you're going through the planer with, is that you're going with the grain. The grain has got to be going this direction. You never want to put it through across the grain. The grain lines, those blades will kind of hit the grain line and more or less rip them off instead of slicing them like it's supposed to. Now the board may actually make it through the planer without breaking or cracking or anything like that, but it will give you a very rough finish, very, very rough, and then it's more time and effort or more planing to get it fixed. So make sure always with the grain. Now if a board like this gets stuck, I put it through, it gets halfway or most of the way and you can't push because it's already in there, grab a piece of scrap, just some board, put it behind this board, it'll grab it and take and push this through. So if things get stuck in the planer, first just take a piece of alder, something tiny, put it behind, it'll shove it out for you.